You mentioned another fight that we've all seen as fans, and I knew when I watched him at Bellator that he wasn't the same guy anymore. That's Rory Macdonald.
Yeah.
And now he's in the PFL looking for answers that aren't there anymore. There's some times where you have that fight that it takes everything out of you.
He's had multiples of those. And that's the real thing. Rory, if you look at some of the fights that he's had, in that fight, the second fight he had with Lawler, people have no idea what was going on in that fight. And they have no idea what Rory Macdonald was dealing with during that fight. Now Robbie had, he had a sliced lip. He had about a 3.5-inch gash from an elbow on top of his head. He had things going on too. But Rory in the very first round had his nose broken. And it was broken to the point he could not breathe out of it. You could see, and he was aspirating blood for the entire fight. And so you would see him come out in the beginning of the round, and he was lighting Robbie up, and he was winning that fight. And then near the end of the rounds, he would tail off. And then he had a really good third round, and he tried to get rid of Robbie in that third round. And it took everything he had, because his body was not able to take all the oxygen that he's breathing in and distribute it through, his body into his muscles to make that lactic acid stay away, because his lungs were absorbing blood. It wasn't that he's drinking blood. It's not that he's swallowing blood. He's aspirating these little tiny blood droplets that are going into his lungs, which are taking his lungs and making them now ineffective in distributing that oxygen through his body. And he went through that for 4 rounds and kept trying and took an incredible beating. And then you look at the beating that he took against Douglas Lima in his first fight against Douglas. Take a look at his leg. His leg, the muscle actually separated from the bone, okay, and is never going back, okay? The fascia split. There's a sheathing that covers the muscle that's called the fascia.
Right.
It got so swollen that it split. And there was so much hemorrhaging on that shin and that muscle to the front of his shin area that the bone actually, the muscle split off of the bone. And now he's got, you can see as he fights, when he fights for the PFL, you're going to see that he has this lump already there, and it's actually separated from the bone. He's a different fighter, and that's because of the battles that he's had. And he's going to have those problems coming up in the future.
The kid that had the battles with Frankie Edgar?
Gray Maynard.
He never came back.
Exactly. Take a look.
He never came back.
Never. From the moment that he's fighting for the lightweight title against Frankie, he puts on that first round. A lot of people say that's a 10-7 round. It's at least 10-8, and Frankie, stays in the fight. That fight, Gray Maynard was never the same fighter after that fight. And that was a draw. It was a draw. And he lost so much in that fight.
Well, is it? I'm sorry.
Because with Rory, with any fighter, because Rory came out a year or two ago and said he didn't know if he had it mentally in him.
Yeah,
how about that mental game where you train for 2-3 months, put everything you have into it, and then you get beat up in front of millions of people. Even if you win, that has to take a mental toll on you. The part that really takes a mental toll, and that's so hard, especially today with social media and the people out there. And I try to tell every fighter that if there's one thing, you kind of talk about it, how stupid were you when you were young compared to what you are now? And I talk about it all the time, man, if I could go back to being 25, dude, I'd do it in a heartbeat, as long as I didn't have to have the brain I had when I was 25, because I was an idiot. I made terrible decisions all the time. I was stupid as hell. If I could have my brain now and be 25, hello.
Yeah.
God doesn't do that, though. There's a balance in life. And you take a look at what is occurring for these guys and how much damage they're taking at times, and just their ability to fight through it and then come back and do it again. It's not, it takes a special person. Rory is a person, he's a completely different man. He was a young kid fighting, started when he's basically 16 years of age fighting professionally, gets into the UFC at a young age, puts on a great performance against Carlos Condit,
but loses it right at the end of the fight, and it gets stopped with 11 seconds, I think, left after he had won the first 2 rounds, most people say, and came out and started starching people. Think of the people that he put. He threw Nate Diaz around up in Toronto. He suplexed him 3 times in a row. He just put an ass whipping on him, put an ass whipping on BJ Penn, walked through Tyrone Woodley, all these people. But then he found that one guy in Robbie that it just didn't work for him. Didn't work for him in the first or in the second fight. Then he had, his battles with Lima here in Bellator when he was there. Man, he took huge damage, and then he becomes a father and he gets married and he's a different person. He just doesn't have that same thing. And I was the one that did the interview. He says, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And trust me, I'm sitting there going, hey, I understand, but I've got to do this interview with him. And, are you thinking about maybe this is, and as soon as someone's telling you, you know what, I'm not sure, it's over. It's over. You're either 100% in when it comes to fighting. Fighting is not a game. We play football, we play basketball, we play baseball. Fighting's the hurt business, and you've got to be 100% in. And if you're not, walk away from it, because the damage that it can do to you, and permanent damage it can do to you for the rest of your life, you're never going to get those years back.
It's so weird, I used to, when I first moved to the Valley, I went to a Muay Thai school, and it was filled with who I thought were fighters. Not that it made a difference for me, because I'm not a fighter. I'm just going there for general exercise. Yeah. And I would ask these guys, when is your next fight? And they're like, fight. I'm a fireman. And they'd have the UFC shorts and the shirt and the greased hair and tatted up. And, and
I train UFC, bro.
It's hysterical. But this is why I said to you, as a manager, even with comedy, about a month and a half ago, I was at a show and they were comparing the movie The Joker to parallels to stand-up comedy. What you go through as a comic, how long do you snap? How long do you move? How long do you, once you see behind the curtain, how do you react to it? Because I tell people all the time, you want to get to this level, but once you get to that level, you think it stops, there's even more drama. It's like when Conor wouldn't come over for interviews. I'm fighting for the championship, bitch. You want to interview me?
Yeah.
I got to go sit with a guy that is doing an interview for the school paper? Really? To do a fucking... So I get all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I get all that stuff.
That's part of the...
That's part of the game.
Pain.
But it's like, you have a window. When I came to LA, I gave myself a window.
Yeah.
And I was like, if this doesn't happen in this time, there's no reason for me to be here. And something would happen. And then something kept happening every 6 months.
But why did it happen?
It happened because I kept working it.
Bingo.
See, I don't understand the peaks and valleys. I don't like there's comics that'll go on a 6-month tour and then they disappear for whatever. That kind of throws me off. I like to always be in the game. I try to at least do 5 spots a week, even though if I'm not working. If I'm not working on the road, I still go out, try out 2 new jokes.
Yeah.
Go out one night pissed. One night I go out and smoke a joint, try out. You're always in the game. I don't like the ups and the downs of the game. I did not like what went on with Conor because life went by. Dustin got tougher. Tony got tougher.
Yeah.
Khabib got tougher. I know you got 100 million, but these guys are getting, I came from the old basketball adage. When I was 12, this is how I looked at life. You got to do what he ain't doing. It's midnight. I know that motherfucker ain't practicing. I'm going to go out there and practice.
Shoot some hoops.
So it's a mental aspect. With fighting, if right now you came to me today and you're 22, and again, I tell you, this is a 3 to 3.5 I'll extend it to 4 window.
Okay.
By the time you're 28, I want you out of here.
See,
with a martial arts school,
you can
a consulting
do that.
service.
But you can always readjust if you're having those 4 years go exactly like you want them to and you don't get damaged. Do another 4-year plan. How can we up that in this next 4 years or 3 years? And that's fine. You can do it. Or you can have it to where, I've taken a lot of damage in these 4 years. And maybe it is time to get out. And that's what I was trying to say with, Rory. It's a matter of when you're looking at guys
that come out and they fight. One of the hardest things about fighting is you've got 15 minutes or 25 minutes to perform. And sometimes when you come out, it is your night, man. You're feeling good. You go out there and everything's working and you feel fast. And some nights you'll go out there and your legs feel like lead. You feel slow. You feel sluggish. You feel like I don't see things as well. And if you don't perform well in those 15 minutes, 25 minutes, you have to hear about it for months before you'll get another chance to undo and come back and prove, hey, I still got it. Because everyone's talking about that last fight. And so you got to live with that last fight for a long time. It's not like you can just step back on the horse. You know, you talked about your view of comedy, and what you're saying is your view is you need repetitions. The more repetitions you get, the more consistent and the better you'll be. That's the way I always looked at it with refereeing. And I tell guys, you need repetitions. You can't be the part-time guy that, I only do the big fights, because you're going to fuck it up. Because if you're only doing those fights and you have this giant space in between them where you have a month or 2 months that you don't referee, you're not in there and you're not able to keep that timing and that level of concentration and that ability to see things. It starts to, like any perishable skill, it starts to wane away. And I talked about, all the time. I used to do 115 to 120 shows as a referee a year. That's shows. That's not fights, And so I would do anywhere between 10, maybe down to 3 fights, depending upon the size of the show. That many for each one of those shows. But that meant I was working every week, multiple times a week. And it kept me where I never had to worry about the little things. It kept me on top, and that's what you're talking about with the comedy. But as a fighter, you can't do that.
The only thing I have an advantage on a fighter is that, A, I don't get punched in the face. And I have B, tomorrow to redeem myself.
Yep.
If I go to the comedy store and eat a bag of dicks on a Monday, you better bet 10 for 10. I'm going to go back there on a Tuesday.
Smack it.
And try to get it. And if I don't get it on Tuesday,
Wednesday's the day.
Wednesday's the day. I'm just saying the wording wrong. There's a joke wrong. I didn't fake. For me, I compare arts.
Yeah, and sometimes
you compare arts.
You do a set, and then sometimes the audience that's not the audience. That's not the one that gets you. And the next night you'll get one of them, and they're just tuned into you, everything you say.
But here's the thing that I don't like. I used those excuses early on, and once I moved to LA, I took that excuse away. Every audience is the same. It's how you come out there.
All right.
It's how you face them.